The clock had just struck 8 a.m. when United States Attorney General Pam Bondi stepped out of her black SUV and into the west entrance of the Justice Department. Her stilettos clicked briskly across the marble floor, her navy blue blazer perfectly pressed, eyes shaded behind dark sunglasses. But behind the confident gait was a burden, one that had kept her awake for nights on end. Weeks earlier, Bondi had received an unmarked package slipped anonymously into her private secure mailbox at Langley. Inside, a thumb drive, a cryptic note that read, "It's deeper than you think. Follow the funding." A friend in robes and a set of internal judicial memos marked confidential. The contents of the drive? Explosive.it suggested that Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, appointed during Trump's first term, had been involved in a private agreement, one that could unravel the very foundation of judicial impartiality in the highest court of the land. The documents alleged that Barrett had facilitated a silent arrangement with a foreign-backed nonprofit masked under the guise of a constitutional research initiative. But hidden in its funding trail was a shadowy link to international green energy lobbies, groups known to funnel money with geopolitical intent, not environmental goodwill. Pam didn't want to believe it. After all, Barrett was a symbol of conservatism, a supposed stalwart against judicial activism. But the evidence kept circling back: wire transfers, encrypted email chains, and even a video call clip where Barrett was seen consulting with an unidentified figure in a European office. The audio was garbled, but phrases like, "We'll ensure the decision tilts your way and the public will never trace it," echoed through Bondi's memory. She had a choice: bury it or expose it. And Pam Bondi had never been one to flinch at the face of powerful opposition. At 10 a.m. she stood in a sealed intelligence conference room inside the West Wing, briefing none other than President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. "This is bad," Trump muttered, holding up one of the printed memos. His voice was gravelly, the seriousness in his tone unmistakable. "Amy's one of ours." Pam nodded, arms crossed. "She was. But this goes beyond politics, Mr. President. If the American people find out a Supreme Court justice accepted backdoor influence from a foreign interest group, especially while ruling on energy regulation cases," J.D. Vance spoke next, "this will tear apart public trust. The court's integrity is sacred. We cannot be the administration that ignored this." There was silence in the room for a few seconds, thick, tense. President Trump finally leaned forward. "We do this clean. We do it by the book. Pam, go public with it. But I want everything airtight. This can't look like a political takedown. It has to be irrefutable." "Understood." Pam gave a firm nod. "Crystal clear." Later that afternoon, Pam Bondi summoned a team of elite federal investigators, cyber forensics experts, and financial auditors. They set up a secure war room deep within the DOJ. Phones were locked in lead-lined boxes. Conversations were not recorded. Every document was printed in a redacted format for controlled access. As the evidence grew, so did the picture. Barrett had allegedly ruled in favor of a green energy bill in a narrowly split 5-4 vote. A bill that had created a billion-dollar gateway for foreign contractors to gain entry into the U.S. renewable energy market. And the nonprofit? It was a facade, with a shell company registered in Luxembourg directly tied to European political financiers. In the final report's draft, Bondi included every layer: motive, money trail, manipulation, and then came the bombshell. A signed personal memo from Barrett herself, dated a year prior, where she mentioned needing to ensure regulatory space for our European counterparts in upcoming judicial matters. It didn't prove criminal intent outright, but it was enough to raise ethical hell. Pam Bondi stared at the binder. She took a deep breath. The next step would be the hardest, presenting this to Congress and then the American people. The media had no clue what was coming. Pam Bondi knew the weight of what she was about to do would shake the Capitol to its core. Still, she didn't flinch. The plan was to go before a closed-door Congressional Oversight Committee, submit the findings under seal, and then, if approved, go public with a press conference. It had to be that way. Clean. Legal. Undeniable, but news travels fast in D.C., especially when powerful reputations are on the line. By the time Bondi arrived at Capitol Hill, the press was already gathering outside. "Pam, is it true about Barrett? Will you press charges? Are foreign governments influencing the court?" Flashes snapped like lightning, but Pam ignored the chaos. She had only one priority: telling the truth. Inside the chamber, the Congressional Oversight Committee on Judicial Ethics and Integrity was already seated. A rare bipartisan panel composed of senators, former federal judges, and constitutional scholars waited behind polished oak desks. The room was heavy with expectation. She took her seat and before even opening her mouth dropped a stack of folders onto the table. The sound echoed sharply. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pam began, her voice steady, "you are about to hear evidence that may be the most serious ethical breach in modern Supreme Court history. My team and I have conducted a comprehensive investigation into potential foreign influence on the judiciary, and we believe we have uncovered a deliberate and concealed conflict of interest, one that centers around Justice Amy Coney Barrett." The room fell into a stunned silence. She continued, "This is not political. This is not ideological. This is about integrity. What you are about to see includes financial disclosures, communication records, international banking transfers, and handwritten memos. All of them point to one fact: a Supreme Court justice may have compromised her impartiality in exchange for ideological and financial support from a foreign-backed nonprofit." Gasps broke out from several members of the panel. Even seasoned senators who had survived scandal after scandal suddenly shifted in their seats. Senator Richard Hammond, a conservative from Texas and longtime Barrett supporter, looked as if someone had punched him in the chest. "Are you suggesting a foreign entity influenced a Supreme Court ruling through direct access to Justice Barrett?" he asked in disbelief. "I'm not suggesting it," Pam replied. "I'm stating that our findings leave very little room for doubt." She activated the monitor behind her. A series of redacted emails appeared, Barrett's personal email address exchanging messages with representatives of an entity called Terra Europa Institute, a so-called academic foundation that had directly lobbied the U.S. government on green energy law. Then came the funding trail, over $2.3 million in wire transfers to a legal fund managed by Barrett's family trust. Though legally obscured through layers of shell companies, the money was traceable. "Why wasn't this caught in financial disclosures?" asked Democrat Senator Lena Harrow from Massachusetts, visibly stunned. "Because the payments were split over years, disguised through what we believe were advisory services and legal seminars never actually rendered," Pam responded. "And the timing of these payments correlate exactly with several decisions Barrett cast in favor of green energy deregulation, decisions that opened the floodgates to European investors." The room shifted from shocked silence to murmurs of horror. This wasn't just a breach of ethics, it was judicial treason. Pam then dropped the hammer. "I am submitting a formal recommendation for immediate congressional review of this matter. I also intend to request a temporary suspension of Justice Barrett from ruling on any further cases until an independent ethics panel completes a full review." The chairman leaned back in his seat, jaw slack. "Attorney General Bondi, if what you're alleging is proven true, this may trigger the first full-scale impeachment inquiry into a sitting Supreme Court justice in over a century." Pam stared straight ahead. "Then so be it." The headlines exploded within hours. "Shock at SCOTUS, Barrett accused of foreign ties. Bondi drops bombshell in secret hearing, calls for immediate suspension of Barrett." Cable news anchors, legal scholars, and political commentators scrambled for answers. Some cried witch hunt. Others, even in traditionally liberal outlets, admitted the documents were damning. In the White House press briefing room, Caroline Leavitt took to the podium. "This administration believes in a strong, independent judiciary. But no judge, no matter how high, should be above scrutiny. We stand behind Attorney General Bondi's investigation and the rule of law will prevail." Meanwhile, in a cloistered part of D.C., Amy Coney Barrett herself remained silent. Her chambers issued a single-sentence statement: "Justice Barrett categorically denies any wrongdoing and looks forward to clearing her name." But for those who had read the files, who had seen the unedited emails and funding trail, silence wasn't going to be enough. 3 days after the congressional hearing, Washington was still reeling. Cable news couldn't stop looping Bondi's presentation. Social media platforms were ablaze. Even usually apolitical Americans began asking, how deep does the influence go? Trust in the Supreme Court, already strained, was teetering on the edge. But for Pam Bondi, the work wasn't over. She had only scratched the surface. In a quiet conference room within the Justice Department, Bondi and her lead investigator, Marcus Dell, reviewed a set of surveillance logs and encrypted communications just decrypted by the NSA. Marcus pointed to a specific time-stamped image. This was taken in Zurich, 6 months before the environmental docket 14B decision. That's Barrett's husband, Jesse Barrett. He's meeting with someone from Terra Europa. Pam leaned in, reading the file. That's Anton Richter. He's not just a representative, he's a financial coordinator for the European Resource Transition Fund. They bankroll Terra Europa and lobby aggressively in D.C. And, Marcus added, we've now confirmed Richter was under light surveillance by Interpol for potentially illicit financial arrangements in the Balkans. This is a man with reach. Pam closed the folder. This just went from suspicious to dangerous. If Jesse Barrett was used as a go-between and Amy knew about it, then it's not just about influence, it's about corruption. But they weren't prepared for what came next. A whistleblower, an unnamed junior law clerk once assigned to Barrett, came forward. The DOJ had issued a quiet call for any information relating to judicial ethics violations. The young clerk responded, nervous but resolute. During a confidential, sworn interview, the clerk revealed something chilling. Justice Barrett received a secured package monthly, always from a different courier service. She called it her special readings and didn't let anyone else touch it. We thought maybe it was spiritual or family-related. But once I mistakenly opened one, inside was a classified brief on a case the court hadn't even agreed to hear yet. Alongside it, a printed memo discussing international expectations about U.S. compliance with eco-trade rulings. Bondi sat back. She was being fed strategy by foreign operatives before the court even made certiorari decisions. That's unprecedented. It confirmed what Bondi feared. Justice Amy Coney Barrett was not just indirectly involved, she was strategically coordinating outcomes. Meanwhile, inside the Supreme Court building, Justice Barrett was under intense internal pressure. While officially denying wrongdoing, she had met privately with Chief Justice John Roberts, who reportedly confronted her about the allegations. "You need to recuse yourself from every active regulatory case," Roberts allegedly warned. "Or we may be forced to take the unprecedented step of issuing a unified internal sanction." Barrett, cool and composed, reportedly responded, "I have nothing to hide. But I also won't be intimidated by politics. This will pass." But whispers within the court said otherwise. Clerks were avoiding her. Security had been tightened around the building. Someone spray-painted "No Foreign Bench" across the marble steps one night before being quickly scrubbed away. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, made her next move. She filed an official petition with the Judicial Conduct Board, invoking the Foreign Influence Clause under the Judicial Ethics Reform Act passed in 2023. No sitting Supreme Court justice had ever been named under the clause. Public reaction was divided but emotionally charged. Conservatives were torn. Some believed the allegations were fabricated to smear one of their champions. But many were now demanding answers. Liberals, who once opposed Barrett's original nomination, now demanded immediate impeachment. In a rare bipartisan moment, senators from both parties appeared together on camera. No justice, no matter how conservative or liberal, should be in the pocket of foreign interests, said Senator Hammond, Republican, Texas. "This isn't about ideology, it's about national sovereignty," echoed Senator Harrow, Democrat, Massachusetts. And the people? They were watching. According to a Gallup flash poll, 71% of Americans now believed the Supreme Court needed independent oversight. Late one evening, in her private DOJ office, Bondi sat alone, staring at a photograph on her desk. It was from her early career when she first swore to uphold the Constitution. She whispered to herself, "We're not just fighting influence. We're fighting for the very meaning of justice." Outside, a storm was gathering. And Pam Bondi knew the real trial had just begun. Capitol Hill was no longer whispering, it was shouting. The Barrett scandal had snowballed into a full-blown constitutional crisis. For the first time since the 1930s, both chambers of Congress were actively reviewing the impeachment of a sitting Supreme Court justice. And at the center of it all was the iron-willed Attorney General Pam Bondi. News outlets from Fox News to MSNBC carried special segments titled "Judgment on Justice, Barrett's Foreign Ties, What We Know, and Pam Bondi vs. the Supreme Power." Editorials, op-eds, think pieces. America was divided, but they were all watching one woman take on the judicial Goliath. Inside the West Wing, President Donald Trump met with Bondi and Vice President J.D. Vance in the Oval Office. "I knew she was soft when they rushed her through," Trump muttered, pacing. "This whole thing stinks worse than the Russia hoax. But this time we've got evidence, thanks to you." Pam nodded. "We still need to proceed carefully. This isn't just a media moment, Mr. President. This is about whether America still has checks and balances." J.D. Vance, ever the calm voice, interjected. "You're doing what most wouldn't dare. And I've got both chambers leaning in your direction, but the court? They're circling the wagons." Indeed, the Supreme Court justices were unusually silent. Legal experts noted how Justice Barrett had gone off the radar, skipping traditional speeches and public appearances. Even her clerks had started being reassigned. It was as if the entire court was holding its breath. That changed when the Washington Standard dropped a bombshell leaked from within the Judicial Conduct Board. Justice Barrett refused to disclose private foreign retreat in Austria paid for by Terra Europa affiliate. The article contained documents showing that Barrett had attended a family-centered values summit hosted in the Alps, fully paid for by North Star Forum, a group later revealed to be directly connected to Terra Europa's media arm. Photos followed. Barrett at a private dinner, seated next to Anton Richter, the same man flagged in DOJ's Zurich surveillance. The fallout was instantaneous. A bipartisan resolution was introduced in the House to establish a special investigative committee on judicial ethics in response to credible allegations against Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Bondi received the news during a strategy session with her team. The room broke into cautious applause, but Bondi didn't smile. "This means they believe me," she said. "But it also means we're in the middle of a war now." Meanwhile, Barrett broke her silence. In a rare interview with conservative commentator Laura Milton, Barrett calmly dismissed the charges. "These are coordinated attacks, plain and simple. I have always acted with integrity. I do not know Mr. Richter beyond a handshake. I've never accepted any bribe. And if America allows politics to start dictating justice, we won't have a republic left." But viewers noticed a difference. Barrett wasn't the same composed figure from her confirmation days. Her voice was sharp, defensive, almost desperate. Within hours, Bondi responded in a press briefing at the Department of Justice. "This isn't about politics. This isn't about left or right. This is about the rule of law. The Constitution gives us a judiciary, but it also gives us oversight. We are simply applying it." Her words went viral. Then, a twist no one saw coming. Marcus Dell, Bondi's lead investigator, barged into her office one evening with an urgent report. "There's a third party," he said, placing a red folder on her desk. "What do you mean?" Bondi asked. "A domestic entity. A nonprofit here in D.C. called Civic Harmony Initiative. They received nearly $600,000 from Terra Europa 2 years ago. Guess who sits on their board?" Pam opened the file. Her heart skipped. Chief Justice John Roberts. Everything changed in that moment. The implications were catastrophic. Was this bigger than just Barrett? Was there a coordinated effort stretching into the highest chambers of the judicial system? Pam Bondi stared at the folder, the weight of history bearing down on her. She had wanted justice. Now she had uncovered a potential constitutional fracture. This could bring down the entire court. Marcus nodded gravely. "You're not just fighting for integrity anymore, Pam. You're fighting for the soul of the republic." The revelation that Chief Justice John Roberts sat on the board of a nonprofit funneling foreign money into U.S. influence operations sent shockwaves through Washington like an earthquake. The public's trust in the Supreme Court, already brittle, now stood on a knife's edge. Attorney General Pam Bondi found herself at the helm of a constitutional reckoning no one in modern American history had ever dared to confront. 2 Supreme Court justices, one implicated directly in covert deals, the other tied to foreign-influenced funding. She had a choice: retreat to preserve institutional credibility or double down and risk exposing the full extent of corruption within the highest court in the land. She chose the latter. The Special Congressional Committee on Judicial Ethics convened in a historic session, broadcast live across every major news network. Bondi was the star witness. Before a packed chamber, she stood tall in a navy suit, no teleprompter, no notes, just conviction. America's judiciary was built on trust. Today, we've uncovered behavior that betrays that trust, not by accident, but by design. Our investigation confirms that Justice Amy Coney Barrett not only received undeclared gifts and strategy briefings from a foreign eco-lobbying group, but also communicated through intermediaries about pending court decisions. We now know these efforts were abetted, if not shielded, by a network that includes individuals tied to other high-ranking judicial figures. The room was dead silent. Bondi continued, this time projecting an image on the committee's screens, a decrypted message between Anton Richter and Jesse Barrett referencing Justice Roberts' general warmth toward our long-term goals. "We are not alleging Roberts committed direct wrongdoing, but the presence of foreign money in civic nonprofits targeting Supreme Court alliances is no longer a theory. It is a documented fact." The silence gave way to gasps. Even seasoned lawmakers sat back in disbelief. Back at the White House, President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance watched the broadcast live. Trump, uncharacteristically solemn, said they thought they were untouchable. Vance replied, "No one is untouchable anymore." That evening, Barrett issued a formal statement of recusal from all active regulatory and foreign-related cases. But it wasn't enough. Public protests erupted outside the Supreme Court building in unprecedented numbers. Crowds carried signs like, "No bench for the bot. Justice or just U.S.? Barrett must go." Calls for impeachment were no longer partisan. They were national. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, history was made. The House Judiciary Committee, after reviewing all documents, voted 21-6 to recommend impeachment proceedings against Justice Amy Coney Barrett for willful breach of judicial ethics, failure to disclose foreign engagements, and manipulation of case outcomes through covert correspondence. Simultaneously, Chief Justice John Roberts voluntarily resigned from the board of the Civic Harmony Initiative, citing a deep respect for the court's integrity and vowing to support reform efforts. Bondi held a final press briefing at the Department of Justice steps. Media from around the world had gathered. What began as a whisper of suspicion has become a thunderclap of truth. Today, America stands not divided but awakened. We are restoring the sanctity of the court not by destroying it but by cleansing it. Justice Barrett will be held accountable through lawful means. And Chief Justice Roberts has taken the honorable step of distancing himself from the conflict. This is not about vengeance, it is about vision. A vision of a nation where no one is above accountability. The press fell silent again, just as it had that day in the committee room when Pam Bondi dropped the first folder. In that silence, a nation listened. The Senate trial of Justice Barrett became the most watched political event since the Clinton impeachment. While Barrett ultimately resigned before a conviction, the proceedings triggered sweeping reforms to judicial ethics. Congress passed the Judicial Transparency and Sovereignty Act, requiring mandatory financial disclosures by all federal judges. Prohibition of foreign-funded retreats and events for any judicial figure. An independent ethics council embedded within the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts remained on the bench, but his power waned. The court took a more reserved approach in the aftermath. Pam Bondi, though criticized by some as too aggressive, was hailed by millions as a defender of American justice. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Trump, who told the crowd, "She didn't just expose a scandal, she defended a system." She reminded us that the law is not a club for the elite, but a sword for the truth. Pam Bondi never sought fame. But in a time when America's most sacred institutions teetered on the edge, she stepped into the storm and reminded a shaken nation that the foundation of liberty isn't comfort. It's courage, and on that day, the room didn't just go silent, the country listened.